everyone, myself Pritili Modak. It's give me a great pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar on the topic of the fundamental of clearing UGC NET exam. This session is designed to guide aspiring scholars and students who aim to successfully qualify for one of India's most prestigious academic eligibility examinations. We are truly honored to have with us Mr. Abhik Ganguly, who is currently serving as a junior research fellow and pursuing his PhD at the Department of English, University of Delhi. His academic interests span areas such as literary theory, aesthetics, postmodernism, and Indian philosophical tradition, which reflect his interdisciplinary approach to literature and research. Beyond his academic pursuit, Mr. Ganguly is also a poet, writer, and literary enthusiast whose essay and creative work have appeared in several journals and magazines such as Hooghly Review, Setu Magazine, Creative Flight Journal, and Room 16 Magazine of JNU. He has also received recognition in literary competition, including the Poetry on Spring contest organized by House of Harmony in 2023. With his experience as a research scholar and his own journey through the UGC NET examination process, he brings valuable insights that will help students understand the core strategies, preparation method, and academic mindset required to clear the UGC NET exam. Now, without any further delay, let us warmly welcome a young dynamic scholar, Mr. Abhik Ganguly, to share his expertise with us. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much, Pritilata, for such a lovely introduction. So, as we have all gathered here today to talk about UGC NET examination, I cleared UGC NET examination twice. The first time I appeared for this exam was when I was doing my master's in English literature from Jamia Millia Islamia. And then I again appeared for this exam and I cleared JRF. At my first attempt, I could only clear NET. And in my second attempt, I could clear JRF. And that was when I had already enrolled myself as a PhD scholar at Delhi University. So the thing is that what I will tell you today is basically a roadmap or a guide on how to walk on this journey that is more often than not very arduous and very demanding, because this is something that more often than not gets mistaken for a quiz competition or a quiz examination. UGC NET examination, the problem with UGC NET examination or how we view UGC NET examination lies in the fact that we see it as a simple exam that we have to mug up for, we have to memorize, and we have to clear that. Instead, what we should focus on is how to clear our concepts, how to be a perfect educator, what makes an educator brilliant in their own field. I'm sure some of you who have gathered here today have already started teaching somewhere. So, as a teacher, when you are entering the classroom, you will realize that what subjects do students have an immense grasp on, and what subjects or what areas are students often lacking in. So then you start rearranging and resystematizing your thought process in order to understand what the student is trying to seek, and accordingly rearrange your lecture. So you have to think of UGC NET examination from the perspective of an educator instead of the perspective of a student. First of all, I would like to say this, that visualize yourself already as a JRF scholar or as someone with an assistant professor title. Because until and unless you believe it yourself, it's very hard. Nobody else can make you believe it until unless you believe it yourself that, yes, I do have the potential of clearing this examination. I have the potential of being, let's say, Dr. whatever your name is. If I'm Abhik, so I want to be Dr. Abhik Ganguly, assistant professor at some university. I don't know which university right now, but yes, I have to visualize that. I have to manifest that. And that manifestation is the first step. Until and unless you visualize yourself getting that designation, getting that title, it's really hard. It's really hard. So when you're thinking about that, the visualization part is extremely important. Believing yourself is extremely important. And then, of course, we move on to the journey that is UGC Net itself. So I won't discuss paper two today, but if some of you are from English literature background as well, we'll have a question and answer session during the end of the lecture. You can ask me, then I'll give you a very generic reading list for that. So for now, I'll just talk about kindly share something for paper two. English literature becomes overwhelming. Yeah, so I'll talk about it right at the end when the Q&A is taking place, because I guess some of us might be from non-English backgrounds as well, and they are particularly interested in knowing about paper one. So in paper one, the thing is there's many things that are there in paper one. And of course, all of us are already aware of the um, exam structure, the paper structure that is there. 50 questions from paper one, 100 questions from paper two, total 150 questions, 300 marks in total, and 300 marks in total, and out of which there's no negative marking. So that's a great relief because other competitive examinations often have negative marking. So here we don't have to stress about the fear of negative marking that is there. What are the sources where we can study from? Yeah, I'll come to that later on, Drishti. So yeah, so of course there's 50 questions from paper one, 100 questions from paper two, and of course the selection ratio is really low. Yeah. So the thing is, there's 150 questions that you have to like you'll appear for in your examination, out of which, out of the 300 marks, it's not written anywhere that you have to score 300 out of 300, because let's be very honest, not everybody gets more than 200 or perhaps more than 250. I cleared JRF in the cycle of December 2023. The result came out in January 2024, and yeah, I had gotten 222 marks out of 300 marks. And paper one was the deciding factor for me in becoming a JRF. Because let's be very honest, most of the times what happens is that people are very particular about paper two, since it's their core area, so they know what they are supposed to do. But the problem lies when they're dealing with paper one. First of all, let's talk about the fear of maths that's there. So in paper one, of late, even I've seen that a question appeared on quadratic equation. So of course, there's always one or two questions which are randomly, which randomly appear out of the blue, and you're not supposed to stress about that one particular question, because let's be very honest, there's 50 questions in total for paper one, and there might be one question, there might be two questions, which are not related to your core areas or something that is not your forte. But you don't need to worry about that in particular. Let that be. It's fine. It doesn't matter if you leave a question or two. Be liberal about your answers. Be liberal about how much you're putting efforts in. Because honestly, nobody expects you to go and study calculus, differentiation, integration, or class 12 mathematics. Unless you're from that background, unless you're appearing for mathematics UGC net, then it's an altogether different thing. But if you are from a humanities background, as I was, then it's totally unnecessary for you to fret your time over mathematical questions. But uh, apart from that, having said that, the thing is, you need to have a strong grasp on basic mathematical numerical equations. For example, upward stream, downward stream, then simple interest, compound interest, and other such kind of numerical problems, which are sort of fun to do. Once you start clearing those questions in your practice examinations, in your practice sets, in your mock papers, you will understand that these questions are really fun to do. There's no mental hassle as such. You just have to memorize the formula and try practicing as many questions as you can, especially related to aptitude. You can try bank PO examination numericals, because what it does is it gives you a very good grasp on what kind of numericals you can solve. And of course, many times what many problems, that candidates face is that they prepare or they memorize the formula, but they don't practice. And they go to the examination thinking that, okay, now we'll solve the questions. But it doesn't work like that. You have to practice. You have to put the pen on the paper. You have to practice. You have to practice numericals. You have to apply them. Until unless you apply them, the problem remains that your hands will freeze, your fingers will freeze in examination. This is the problem that I had faced when I had appeared for net examination the first time around. I had appeared for the examination and I had prepared paper two quite strongly, but paper one was sort of weak, and I couldn't get JRF in my first attempt because of this thing. Because I had memorized the formulas, it was all there in my head. I thought, okay, when the examination comes, I'll solve it. What can stop me? But lack of practice did. Of course, as it happens. Practice is very essential, especially when it comes to numerical aptitude. And of course, there's other things as well, which I'll talk about in the course of the lecture. But when you're practicing numericals, keep a timer, keep a clock, or perhaps, like I'll say, try avoid using mobile phones. Don't use alarms on your mobile phones, because what happens is one notification comes and you get distracted. You think that, okay, let me just check this one notification and then I'll get back to practicing my questions. It doesn't work like that. Put your phone on airplane mode and solve that bloody question. Solve that question that is there in front of you, that is waiting for you to be solved. So set a timer, get an analog clock, get a digital clock. It's totally up to you. Set the timer and practice questions every day. Pick up different facets of mathematics. And I'll say you can also refer to NCRT mathematics books from class 8th to class 10th. If your basics are sort of messed up, and if you want to revise your basics, if you want to strengthen your basics, class 8th to class 10th NCRT mathematics books work like magic. They're absolutely magical. They're easy to understand, and you don't need to stress or fret over some very difficult concepts. I'll say, if it's possible, also try to learn basic calculus like differentiation and integration. I'm not asking you to do complex quantum mechanical problems or quantum physics problems, but very basic maths questions. Because many times what happens is, for example, the quadratic equation question that came in one of the net examinations last time around, I noticed that it wasn't really that complex. Many times what happens is we get scared. The moment we see some complex equation, we see something that is, time demanding or something like that, we end up thinking that, okay, now this is something that is beyond our wavelength. It's not at all like that. It's not at all like that. Until unless you practice, this problem is going to be there, and it is something that unnerves someone. It had unnerved me as well when I'd appeared for the paper first time around. I mean, I had seen mathematical questions that didn't make much sense to me. And yeah, I mean, it was slightly weird for me as well, because I wasn't expecting UGC Net to give these kind of questions. So don't walk in with expectations. Don't expect anything. The result is not there in your hands. What's there in your hands is the fact that how much hard work you can put in. Don't care about the result. I know easier said than done, but I have been on this path, just like you are right now, perhaps, or you are going to be. So don't think about the result. Don't fret about the fact that, okay, what's my results going to be like? How many questions am I supposed to attempt? No, don't do it from that perspective. That perspective is very damaging. It's very harmful. Instead, what you can do is think about how many questions can you get right from the perspective of playing it like a game. It's a game. The thing is, as long as you worry, as long as as you take stress, it's going to create havoc on your mind. The thing is, the first thing to do is to still your mind. Until and unless the mind is stilled, until and unless the mind is patient, calm, and observant, it's bound to get distracted. You'll get worried. You'll start thinking, okay, I can't get this question right. What am I supposed to do here? And you might end up, making a mess. So I'll say, don't worry about those things. It's fine. You clear the exam, well and good. You don't clear it, it's fine. You can clear it the next time around. Life doesn't end there. There's a lot many things to, like to life rather than this examination alone. This examination doesn't make or break you. It doesn't. The moment you stop thinking from that perspective, believe me, most of you will clear net easily like that. It's not that hard. If I can, why can't you? That's the perspective that I have. If a person like me can, I'm not a special person. I'm not God or anything. If I can, then perhaps you can. So I've talked about maths. Now I'll come to the other sections that are there. Uh, One of the most important things that I was earlier talking about is the perspective of educator. So when you're walking in, when you're appearing for this exam, think of yourself as an educator. Think of yourself as a professor. Think of yourself as someone who has already reached that position, and then attempt the questions. Because most of the times, what happens is that a lot of these questions from paper one, especially those which are centered on teaching aptitude, research aptitude, reading comprehension, logical and analytical reasoning, as well as data interpretation, is more often than not a very teacher-centric arrangement. It isn't necessarily something that one has to study everything a lot. One has to understand everything a lot. If you apply your common sense, a lot of these questions you're going to get right. There's no what you would call some kind of complicity or some kind of conceit that these guys are asking in the questions. More often than not, they're commonsensical in nature, especially the ones centered on teaching aptitude, research aptitude. For example, in teaching aptitude, um, there's Bloom's taxonomy. So in Bloom's taxonomy, teaching has to have three kind of qualities. The first is knowledge, the second is communication skills, and the third is aptitude. Knowledge is constitutive of cognitive function. Communication skills is of psychomotor skills, or which can also relate to kinesthesia. And aptitude is something that belongs to the affective skills. So now, when I'm telling you about Bloom's taxonomy, think of yourself as this educator, think of yourself as this professor who has entered a classroom. And now you know that, okay, so how am I supposed to instruct these kids? How am I supposed to make these kids understand what teaching is really about? How am I supposed to disseminate the knowledge that I have? So try to understand from this perspective that memorize this like a roadmap. Don't memorize it without understanding the concept itself or without having conceptual clarity. Because I think one of the biggest problems candidates like us face is the fact that we don't understand concepts um, uh, in a very um, normal way. Instead, we sort of think of concepts in a way that like we'll have to memorize this and we'll have to regurgitate and we'll vomit it out on the day of examination. Don't do that. Instead, try to understand what is it all about. Because the moment you try to think of it this way, ki, okay, I'll memorize and like I'll rectify it and then I'll vomit it out on the day of examination, chances are you might forget. Chances are it might slip out of your mind because of the stress of the examination, because of the fact that you are appearing for this examination, because of the fact that you might have to go 20 miles away to the examination center. And of course, NTA hasn't given you a good center. It never gave me a good center. I always got centers at the border of Delhi, since I'm based in Delhi. So when we're talking about Bloom's taxonomy, so the teacher has knowledge. The teacher needs to have communication skills. If the teacher doesn't communicate, the knowledge won't be disseminated. So when the knowledge and communication skills are combined, then it leads to aptitude. So essentially, if you understand Bloom's taxonomy, How did you balance it with your theorem degree? Yeah, I'll get to it. So when you understand Bloom's taxonomy, with the example that I gave, that think of yourself as a teacher, walk into a classroom, how will you disseminate the knowledge? You'll disseminate it through communication. Knowledge and communication leads up to aptitude. So these three things, the moment you use such living examples, it works like magic. You won't have to memorize anything. You won't have to memorize it without, like understanding what you are actually talking about. Similarly, there's other concepts like memory, understanding, reflective, which were given by theorists, respectively, like Herbert Morrison and Hunt. So, memory based is, of course, the rote memorization. Understanding is the kind of example that I gave you right now, the one that leads to an insight. And finally, reflective is how you adapt or how you use that knowledge to, let's say, in doing a discourse analysis. So, discourse sound is very low. Okay, is it all right now? Okay, so yeah, thank you. So yeah, so reflective is essentially when you're adapting that knowledge to practical means. So essentially, let's say I am teaching you Derrida's deconstruction. All right, so not able to get it properly. Deepa, I think there's some problem on your end because I think my audio is fine. People can hear me. So try reconnecting once. Perhaps that might solve the problem. Yeah. So yeah, what I was talking about. Yeah. Let's say I'm teaching Derrida's deconstruction to you. So as I'm teaching Derrida's deconstruction, what I'm doing is, of course, I'm disseminating the knowledge to you. You're getting the knowledge from me. But are you using that knowledge to create something? When I mean create something, what I mean by create something is, are you using that concept to analyze something, to analyze, let's say, a pop cultural phenomenon? It isn't necessarily that you have to memorize the whole thing and, like regurgitate it. That's for getting marks. But when you are appearing for these examinations, you have to understand, how does this concept work? What is Derrida's deconstruction actually? Is it something related to something getting torn apart, or is it some kind of literary theory that I have to understand, and there's no, there's no strict meaning, and meaning is lost between abstract signifiers. So you have to understand that, and you have to apply it on your theory. And once you apply that theory, you will understand that how literary theory actually works, which will be beneficial for you in paper two. Because a lot of the times what we see in UGC net examinations is that chronological based questions are asked. The publication years are asked, that Derrida published this book in which year, Foucault published this book in which year. All of that is fine. But I'll say try going through, let's say, even if you don't have time in your hands, if you can't read the books, try going through Wikipedia. Try to understand what the author meant, what were they actually trying to convey. Once you get an idea of the gist that they were trying to say, try applying it to your daily lives. For example, Lacanian psychoanalysis is there. So I'll give a very brief example of Lacanian psychoanalysis. So Lacan says this, Jacques Lacan, he was a French psychoanalyst who came after Sigmund Freud. And his theory of lack is very interesting. So, like he suggests that there's three orders: the real, the symbolic, and the imaginary. And lack is something that we want to fulfill, but we can't ever fulfill really. So, what is it really all about? Is it something that we can relate to on a personal level? I think yes, you can. So when you look at all of these ads that are played on media, all these ads that are there, they are supposed to play on your insecurities. For example, there's a fairness cream, or there's, like something. So what are they targeting at? They're targeting at your insecurities. They're targeting at your own lack. So you can apply Lacanian psychoanalysis to media like that. This is just one example. You have to think examples for yourself. I thought so for myself, and it helped me in understanding a lot many concepts that were there. So it eased the path for me because I just didn't memorize these things for the sake of it. I understood those things as they were and tried to apply them to various phenomena of daily lives that take place, the mundaneness that is there. For example, Walter Benjamin's, yeah. So works of five different chronologies, even that appeared even in our set. I remember they had mixed up Foucault, Derrida, and who else and whatnot. And yeah, it is there. I mean, you have to memorize the works of these authors. Unfortunately, that part is true. That memorization is there. But the thing is, what I'm telling you is, once you understand how these concepts work, which concept was there in which book, it'll be beneficial for you. It'll help you understand, okay, so how am I supposed to proceed with the publications? And like I said earlier, if you memorize it for the sake of memorization, there's a high chance that it might slip out of your mind because of stress, because of God knows something else. So try to understand those concepts that are there. You can try Wikipedia in case you don't have the time to go through books. But I'll say try to go through books if you have time on your hands, because that enriches your preparation. And because most of you also have to appear for PhD after this. Most of you also have to appear for PhD after this. Until and unless you understand how literary theory works, what is actually thesis, what your statement of proposal is, what all of those things are, these things won't matter then, because there's many people who might clear net, but but the thing is that there might be this problem that they are not able to like they are not able to get an admission in PhD because they don't know how to draft a statement of proposal um, or a synopsis as well. So the thing is, use this preparation as also a nourishing ground for your PhD preparation. And in case if you're already pursuing PhD, then it's well and good. Then you already understand what I'm trying to stress on. So, anyways, when we move on, then there's of course this Gagne's 9 levels of understanding, which I feel is something that you can perhaps take a glance at. It's not necessary to memorize each and everything that is there, but try to be thorough. Try to be thorough with your presentation, with your preparation. So, since I talked about research aptitude, some of you might be there who are trying to prepare for PhD or who are trying to get admission into some institution for PhD. So here's the thing. The research aptitude section of UGC Net Paper 1 will help you immensely when it comes to preparing your proposal, the field of area you want to work in. Something that I have noticed as a personal observation is that Indian PhD aspirants are more often than not stuck in various kinds of cliche topics. And by cliche, I don't mean to deride these topics, not at all. But the problem remains that these are very cliche topics in the sense that almost it has been done to death. For example, somebody takes Manto's Toba Tek Singh and applies the theories of partition studies to it. It's understandable from a particular perspective, but it has been done to death over the past 7 decades. So try to pick on something that is comparatively new, that is comparatively latest, and hasn't been done before. Try to pick on new endeavors. Don't pick on avenues which have already been explored before. Try to pick on avenues which are recently laid out, which are sort of developing right now, which haven't been developed yet. So when we are talking about research aptitude of UGC Net Paper 1, the main research thing that I was taught in my undergrad was the 5 Ws and 1H. So what are the 5 Ws and 1H? These are basically what you would call, these comprise the research questions that are there in your thesis or in your proposal. So the 5 Ws are who, what, where, when, why, and the 1H is how. I'll repeat it again. Who, what, where, when, why, and how. So why? When you think about it, what is the central argument of the thesis that is there? What is the central argument of the thesis that is there? Where are you sourcing your arguments from? The primary literature, the secondary literature that is there. When? Why? The most important aspect of your proposal or your research is the why part. Why are you doing this? Why is it important? Many people might ask you, especially when you're appearing for interview panels, they might ask you on your face, why do you think is it important? It has been done to death before. So this is why I was mentioning that try to avoid cliche topics, because the moment you step into an interview room and you mention that you're doing something related to, let's say, Manto and partition studies, and then until and unless you're offering fresh perspectives, it's bound to get trashed by the interview panel. They will say on your face that, oh, this is something that has been done to death. So the why part is really not, something that holds them. And finally, how? How do you plan to do it all? What's your roadmap? What's the journey going to look like for you? So when we're talking about objectives of research, there's three objectives: theoretical, factual, and applicative objectives. So theoretical for us English literature students, theoretical often means the application of literary theories. So when, let's say, when you're memorizing Derrida, when you're memorizing Lacan, Foucault, and all of these theorists that are there, understand their theories and think of it whether they are applicable for your own thesis argument or not. The moment you start thinking about it, you will remember what's there for the examination. Of course, chronological works are important, they are very crucial. But the thing is, this is indirectly tied to your UGC net paper 2 preparation. Both of these paper 1 and paper 2 aspects are interlinked. And as long as you prepare for one, it'll indirectly help you for the second paper as well. So, what are the theoretical objectives? Let's say application of literary theory, something like Donna Haraway's The Cyborg Manifesto from 1985/6. You want to apply it to something like, let's say, solar punk genre of literary works. So, how do you do it? Why do you do it? When do you do it? What is the central argument of the thesis? And think about those things. That will directly nourish your paper 1 preparation, especially from the perspectives of research aptitude. So, of course, there's two types of research. There's deductive research and there's inductive research. In deductive research, there's theory first, and then comes hypothesis, then comes observation, and finally comes confirmation. Whereas in inductive research, observation is the primary and utmost significant thing. Then comes pattern, then comes hypothesis, then comes theory. So, of course, our research, the humanities method of research or methodology of research is quite significantly different from the STEM research or the sciences research that is there. I'm not particularly aware about how the sciences guy go ahead with their research, but I think it's mostly centered on observational data, which might not be true for our case until unless some of us are pursuing digital humanities or um, psychology based studies in which you have to map out participants and study their psychological states. So ours is a more post-positivistic based of research, which consists of constructivists and critical realists, mostly concerning with ontology, epistemology, and methodology. So those are some of the most crucial aspects of the area that we humanities people mostly deal with. So there's many kinds of methods of research. There's experimental research, there's descriptive research, and there's historical research. So historical can be something like a historical materialist analysis, something that Marx and Hegel did a lot. So it can be in that vein, or it can be descriptive, or it can be experimental as well. Experimental is something that's hard to define. You can't define it in words as such, but the thing is, when you look at one, you understand that this is one. So there's various steps of research that are there. For example, defining and redefining problems, formulating the hypothesis, what is the central argument of the thesis? That is the most important. Collective, collecting, organizing, evaluating data. The data perhaps is something that is crucial when we are talking about the sciences research. But for us, there's actually no data. It's more like uh, observational information that we accumulate and we analyze. So there's also comprehensive literature review, in which there's known, unknown, and deciding what the researcher will contribute to the field, which is another important thing, that what do you want to contribute to this field? How are you contributing to this field? So yeah, I'll briefly talk about the format of thesis. So the format of thesis usually is title page, certificate, acknowledgement, table of contents, list of tables, list of figures, list of abbreviations. And in chapters, there's introduction, review of literature, research methodology, data analysis, summary, and conclusions. Memorize this. Memorize this in one of the net examinations asked from ages ago. They had asked this pattern, that what is the exact pattern of a thesis? So what is supposed to appear after what? They had asked the chronology of that. So that is very important. Try memorizing it, of course. And as long as you understand it, it's even brilliant, because then you'll actually remember it. If you memorize it without understanding, then it can get messed up. You might mess up the order. So they also ask questions on bibliography formats. For example, there's three which we usually follow. So if you have journal publications, you would often deal with the headache that is there when it comes to citing papers. So could you please repeat the steps of thesis paper again? Yeah, sure. So the format of thesis is title page, certificate, acknowledgement, title page, certificate, acknowledgement, table of contents, list of tables, table of contents, list of tables, list of figures, list of abbreviations, list of figures, list of abbreviations. Then we come to the chapters. First thing is introduction. Second is review of literature. First is introduction, second is review of literature. Third is research methodology. Third is research methodology. Fourth is data analysis. Fourth is data analysis. And finally, we have summary and conclusions. That is the fifth and last one. Summary and conclusions. So yeah, when we're talking about bibliography formats, so in case if you have had journal publications, which I will advise you, yeah, you're welcome, Trisha. So if you're right now in your MA, I'll advise you try to get journal publications. Try for UGC care listed journals, because they are sort of prestigious and they are reputed. And when you're appearing for PhD interviews, the panel would be impressed. You speak so well, man. Thank you so much, Karun. Yeah, you're sweet. That's sweet of you. So yeah, so when you're appearing for PhD interview, this is very crucial. Having paper publication helps your case a lot. I had paper publications and my interview panel was sort of impressed with me. And you know, when you write out of your masters, or let's say when you are in your masters, so please, I'll just type it out. I'll just type it out towards the end of the lecture. So yeah, when you're a master's student and let's say you're appearing for PhD interviews, or you just passed out of your master's, not much time has passed. And when you're appearing for these interviews, if you have journal publications, it helps your case a lot, especially related to your thesis area. It will make them understand that what all areas are the candidate interested in. And the thing is, when you're working on these papers, one of the most headache-inducing things is citation of that paper. You know, if you have worked on a Scopus index paper, it makes you lose your mind. Some of us who are there in the PhD process thing right now altogether would understand the pain that I'm talking about. So when you are citing paper, there's three formats that are usually followed. American Psychological Association, which is APA, Modern Language Association, which is MLA, and finally Chicago Manual Style. There's more citation styles like Harvard and etc. etc. But these three are the most important. Try to memorize the in-text citation and the end-text citations for these three formats: the APA one, the MLA one, and the CMS one. And also try to look up who founded that, which association are they related to, what was the year of their foundation, because this is something that they had asked. I don't think so they had asked us, but they had asked probably a batch older than ours, that what was the year in which APA was founded. So they might not ask you the exact format for citation style of that particular format, but they might ask you what's the particular year in which it was founded. So yeah, that is also very crucial. And I think it was in our paper, what they had done was they had mixed matched. They had given us APA citation, MLA citation, and CMS citation. And they had given us in-text citations on right-hand side. Left-hand side, there was APA, MLA, CMS. Right-hand side, there was in-text citations. And they essentially asked us that, how do you match these? So don't just prepare in-text citations for these formats. Also prepare in-text citations along with in-text citations. And the most brilliant way of doing this is when you write papers. Try writing papers, doesn't matter. In case you like in case your paper gets rejected, doesn't make it through the peer review, it's fine. The world doesn't end. Sun will rise again and you can try again. The world doesn't stop, nor should you. Send that paper to some other journal, try to get it through. And even people like us who are right now in the PhD process, even our papers get rejected after year of waiting. So it happens a lot when there's Scopus journals. UGC listed journals take six months to respond. So try for those. And I'll say avoid trying for predatory journals which say that we'll charge you 3,000 rupees and we'll publish you the next day. Those are absolutely useless. Those won't help your case. And professors already know, because professors have been in this industry for the past 3 decades, so they know when they're looking at a predatory journal publication. So don't try to fool a professor. They are far more experienced than we are. They know how things work because they have been through the process themselves. So try for good journal publications, memorize these formats, put them to practical use, and the thing is, you will always remember this. You won't forget it, or it won't go out of vogue or fashion. So when we're talking about so we're done talking about research. Now I'll switch to communication. So in communication, there's a lot of information that you have to memorize. But I'll say when you memorize, also try applying your common sense when you're appearing for the examination. Because even I tried memorizing, but I used to forget most of these terms that were there. For example, the 7 C's of communication. That is something that I believe is quite irrelevant to our daily lives. We don't need to be taught the 7 C's of communication in order to communicate effectively. We can simply talk to people and communicate our ideas. This is more like an abstract theorization of something that is not very pragmatic, not very pertinent for daily lives. So when you're dealing with this section, the communication section, try applying common sense in the examination. I'm not saying don't prepare this section, don't memorize this section, do whatever it takes. It's up to you. But the thing is, please use your common sense. That'll help you a lot in this examination. You don't need to think about it in other ways. So, of course, I mean, there's when it comes to communication, one more important thing is, when was, let's say, Press Information Bureau established? When was Press Trust of India established? When was RNI established? When was Press Council of India established? So these are some things that earlier they used to ask a lot of questions from, but now they don't. But you never know. They might start asking it again. So it's better to remember their founding years, who their first founder CEOs were, or who their first founder directors were, and if there's a current CEO or not. And of course, I mean, when I'm talking about CEOs, Niti Aayog is a very important organization. Memorize all the names that are there, the CEO, the vice chairman, who leads the Niti Aayog, which all states are a part of Niti Aayog and whatnot. You understand what I'm trying to say. So when it comes to Niti Aayog, learn everything that is there on Wikipedia. Niti Aayog is a very important organization from the perspective of examination. So then there's people development and environment. Again, these are things that you will have to memorize. There's no other recourse to this. Um, until unless you're an environmental studies scholar, this won't help your thesis directly. But of course, if you're appearing for other competitive entrance examinations, this kind of data often gets recycled and repeated and rinsed. So that is the pattern of these examinations, sadly, in India. You'll have to do this. There's no other option. You'll have to memorize how many wildlife sanctuaries are there, how many biodiversity hotspots are there, all of those things. These are basic things that one has to do. Um, then, of course, one more important thing is conversion of binary number to decimal number. It's really easy, but yeah, it's really easy. Conversion of binary number to decimal number. You can open up YouTube and you can look it up once, and it's not that hard. It's very easy, very commonsensical. So you can, like ace it quite easily. Also, try to memorize the articles of the Constitution. Try to understand what articles of constitutions deal with what areas. For example, the articles 14 to 18 deal with right to equality, 19 to 22 deal with the right to freedom, 25 to 28 deal with freedom of religion, 29-30 deal with cultural and educational rights, and 32 deals with right to constitutional remedies. So these are some of the broad areas that I'm talking about, but try to dive in deeper, and because they do ask questions from the articles of constitution as well. And one more important thing that has become very crucial is Indian knowledge systems. So when I appeared for this examination, they had asked us, I think, probably three or four questions, and it wasn't very tough or something. They had asked us the pramanas or the proofs that are there in Advait Vedant philosophical system. So yeah, Advait Vedant school of philosophy, they had asked us, and Advait Vedant has six proofs, six pramanas. Um, Anuman, Arthapati, Anupalabdhi, and all of those things that are there. So try to understand the differences between Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta. Try to learn about basic Indian knowledge systems, Indian knowledge traditions. For example, the Bhakti movement, Kabir, then all of those other figures, Mirabai, and all those other figures that are there. Bhakti movement, then how did Bhakti movement emerge? Where did it emerge from? In what century was it actually first noticed? So it was probably noticed in southern India, in Tamil Nadu, during the 8th century. And it was started by the Shaivas. When we are talking about Bhakti movement, we often get confused with the Vaishnavas. That was taking place around in 15th, 16th century. So it actually started in the 8th century. So this is a catch. This kind of catch you will have to grasp on. You'll have to understand that what are the basic differences. Let's say, what is Buddhism actually all about? Buddhism is about no self, especially the Theravada Buddhism. So you'll have to understand that, and you'll have to talk about that. You'll have to understand that theoretically. For example, Buddhism differs from Advaita Vedanta in this perspective that the nothingness comes out of nothingness. But the Advaita Vedanta school instead believes that something has to come out of something. Nothing can't really emerge out of nothing. So the nothingness of Buddhism is negated by the Advaita Vedanta school, which believes that the Atman is the same as Brahman, or the ultimate reality. Whereas the Buddhists, or the Siddhartha Gautama, or the Gautama Buddha, instead believes that there's anatman, there's no atma, really, there's nothingness. So those kind of differences that I'm talking about, you'll have to understand the Bhakti movement, the Mahabharata, the Ramayana, basic stories. You don't have to dive in very much deep. I'm not asking you to, write papers on that. But the thing is, try to understand what these things mean. And there's many, many things in IKS. So if you understand these basic things, that what is Samkhya philosophy about, what is Bhagavad Gita about, and all of those things, then it sort of prepares the ground also well for your future research. Because IKS is a very developing field right now, and many researchers are interested in IKS. So English department particularly takes in IKS candidates a lot. And right now, there's also research grants that are being given out to scholars of this particular field. And it's not necessary you have to belong to English literature only to pursue this. Many people from Hindu studies, many people from Buddhist studies, philosophical background, psychology background, history background are pursuing this. And it's a sort of an interdisciplinary thing. Everybody is, trying their hand at it, as long as it benefits them, of course. So, ICAS is important, and the last most important thing is NEP 2020. NEP 2020, look the dossier up on Google, go through all the points that are there. Even in our examination, the NEP 2020 was, I think, it was probably in Parliament or something, or it would have been passed already, but wasn't effective yet. But still, questions were asked from that. And it's very important. Try to understand all of the things that are there. Don't ignore any NEP 2020, because there's good 4 or 5 questions, that come from that area. So once you're thoroughly done with that, or once you're thoroughly prepared with that, it'll help you in like appearing for the examination. So, and of course, last but not the least, ICT is there, information and communication technology, which is, what do I even say about that? I mean, it's a very easy section. There's not much difficulty in there. You can, simply like have, like, just use your common sense. No need to complicate questions, no need to overthink. Just think it through, sit down with a calm mind, look at the question, and you'll have the answer for ICT. For ICT, environmental, and all of these things, use your common sense, reading comprehension as well, and you'll be set. For reading comprehension, try to read newspapers like the Hindu or the Indian Express daily for, let's say, 4 or 5 months, or whatever time is left for your preparation. It's March now. Yeah, it's March now, and June. I think the exam is going to be in June or July. So you have what, 3 or 4 months at your hand. So in these 3 or 4 months, try to read newspaper daily, because not only what it does is enriching your intellectual vocabulary, but what it also does is makes your reading speed faster. When you're appearing for the examination, that is one very crucial thing. Reading comprehension shouldn't take much time. It's something that should be like this. You just go and you just, ace the questions that are there, because that is one sure short way of scoring marks. So don't let it go waste. That is very, very important. So I feel that I have covered everything. And in case there's questions you want to ask, I think we can be open to that. So yeah, I'm done essentially. I hope you understood the lecture. Yeah.